Hey everyone! Today we're sewing the EVE cardigan. The EVE cardigan is designed in a soft sweatshirt fabric with a clean structured feel. A continuous rib finish runs from the neckline through the front opening to the hem, creating a cohesive, refined look. The softly curved front opening and 3-button closure add a subtle design detail to an otherwise minimal silhouette. It has a relaxed, slightly oversized fit and can be worn as a set with the EVE lounge pants. For your main fabric, medium to heavyweight sweat jersey or similar knit fabric is recommended. Avoid fabrics that are overly thin or lack body. For ribbing, 1x1 or 2x1 rib knit with at least 50% horizontal stretch is recommended. Rib fabric with less stretch may be difficult to sew. These are all the tools and materials you'll need for this project. Let's get started. Prep your fabric by pre-washing, drying, and ironing your fabric before cutting out your patterns. Let's start by transferring all the notches and applying the interfacing. On the wrong side of the main fabric pieces, mark the notches as indicated on the pattern. For all markings, use something erasable like water-soluble fabric pen, friction pen, tailor's wax chalk, etc. Also mark the half points of the back bodice by folding it in half. Next, fold the back neck rib and back hem rib pieces in half and mark the half point along the long edges on the wrong side. Moving on to marking the opening rib, for one side, place the paper pattern onto the wrong side and transfer only the notch markings. For buttonholes on the front opening rib, first pierce holes at both ends of each buttonhole on the paper pattern using a pin or awl. Flip the pattern and place it onto the wrong side of the fabric and mark through the holes. Also transfer the notch markings. Then, connect the marks to draw the buttonhole lines. Next, prepare a 4x8 cm piece of fusible interfacing. Position it on the wrong side of the right front opening rib so that it covers all 3 buttonholes. Then, fuse it with steam. Turn the fabric right side up. Use the paper pattern and retransfer the buttonhole markings onto the same positions, this time on the right side of the fabric. Next, we're going to assemble the main fabric pieces together. With the right sides together, sew the shoulder seams of the back bodice and the front bodice using an overlock stitch. For this project, all overlocked edges are finished using a standard overlock machine setting. Trim 0.5 cm at the knife and use a stitch width of 0.5 cm as a default. Press the seam allowances toward the back bodice. With the right sides together, attach the sleeve to the bodice. First, match and pin the sleeve cap to the shoulder seam, then align and pin the notches and both ends. Distribute the remaining ease evenly and pin in place. Then sew using an overlock stitch. Press the seam allowances toward the sleeve. With the right sides together, fold the garment in half horizontally. Align the bodice seams and sleeve seams, then sew using an overlock stitch. Press the seam allowances toward the back. Next, we're going to assemble the rib fabric. Join the back neck rib and the front opening ribs as shown. With the right sides together, overlock both ends to secure. Press the seam allowances toward the front opening ribs. Attach each end of the back hem rib to each end of the front opening rib, right sides together, and sew using a serger. Press the seam allowances toward the front opening ribs. With the rib pieces formed into a tube, fold it in half upward with wrong sides facing each other. Press with an iron to set the fold. Set the buttonhole function according to your sewing machine, adjusting it to match the size of the button you are using. With the rib folded in half, sew the buttonholes through both layers at the marked positions. Always test the buttonhole on the scrap piece first and adjust the settings before sewing on the main fabric. Carefully open the buttonholes using a seam ripper or small scissors, taking care not to cut through the stitches. Take both sleeve hem ribs and fold each one in half widthwise with right sides together. Overlock the short edge to form a tube. Press the seam allowance to one side. Fold the rib in half upward with wrong sides facing each other and press to set the fold. With the rib piece joined into a tube, we're going to pin it evenly around the bodice opening with right sides together. Match the corresponding notches and seam lines first. Then, evenly distribute and pin the remaining sections. Overlock stitch around the entire edge, joining the rib to the bodice. Press the seam allowances toward the bodice. This step is optional. If you have a cover stitch machine, sew along the red dashed lines to reinforce the seam and top stitch the seam allowance in place. This step helps secure the seam allowance and gives a more finished, professional look. To achieve a similar effect, you can top stitch only on the bodice side using a single straight stitch. However, depending on the fabric, the stitches may not turn out evenly, so testing on a scrap piece is recommended. Moving on to the sleeve, first mark the point opposite the side seam. Then fold the rib so that this point meets the side seam and mark the quarter points at both folded ends. Repeat the same process for the sleeve, marking the half point and quarter points. Turn the sleeve inside out so the wrong side is facing out. Insert the sleeve rib inside the sleeve, aligning the right sides together. Match the side seams and corresponding notches, then pin in place. Since the rib is shorter than the sleeve opening, gently stretch the rib to match the sleeve as you serge around the edge. Press the seam allowances toward the sleeve. Again, this step is optional. If you have a cover stitch machine, sew along the red dashed lines to reinforce the seam and top stitch the seam allowance in place. But unlike the bodice opening ribbing, this part of the garment needs stretch, so single straight stitching is not recommended for a similar effect. Moving on to the buttons, overlap the front rib bands with the buttonhole side on top. Through the buttonhole opening, mark the center of each buttonhole on the opposite front band. Prepare 3 2cm buttons. Cut a long length of matching thread. Fold it in half by bringing the ends together, then pass the 2 loose ends through the eye of the needle. Leave the looped end longer and keep the 2 loose ends shorter. Fold the marked points in half, aligning with the direction of the rib. Insert the needle through only the marked front layer. When you reach the end of the loop, pass the needle through the loop and pull to secure a knot. The stitching should not be visible on the back side of the rib. Bring the button and turn it so the back side is facing up. Position it on the back side of the rib. Pass the needle through the lower hole. Then, as you come back from the opposite side, insert the needle through the hole directly across from it. Next, catch a small section of the rib with the needle, then pass it through the lower hole again. Bring the needle back up through the upper hole. Repeat this process about 3 to 4 times. Finally, after bringing the needle back up through the upper hole, fold the rib in the opposite direction from before. This time, use the opposite pair of holes and repeat the same process. Catch a small section of the rib, go down through the lower hole and come back up through the upper hole. Repeat 3 to 4 times. Finally, after passing the needle through the upper hole, unfold the rib back to its original position. Wrap the thread once around the back of the button to form a loop, then pass the needle through the loop and pull tight to secure a knot. Repeat this step about 3 times. Next, insert the needle close to the knot, passing it through only the top layer of the rib. Make sure it does not go through the back and bring the needle out through the side of the rib. Trim the thread short and the remaining thread will naturally slip inside the rib. This creates a clean, high-end button finish with no visible knots on the back. Repeat for all 3 buttons. And there we have our Eve cardigan completed. Comfortable yet detailed, perfect for both relaxed days and going out. For the pattern link and detailed illustrated instructions, check out the description box below. If you share your make, tag me on Instagram so I can see and feature your work. Thanks for watching.